From the studios of KPFA in Berkeley, California, this is Against the Grain on listener-sponsored Pacifica Radio. My name is C.S. Song. Mario Martinez is a pioneering neuropsychologist who lectures around the globe on how people's beliefs and attitudes affect their physical health and well-being. The founder of biocognitive science, Dr. Martinez works at the intersection of culture, psychology, wellness, and longevity. His basic premise, based on years of research and investigation, is that what society teaches us to believe has profound effects on our biology, on our immune, nervous, and endocrine systems. And whereas mainstream medical research has focused, he says, on what makes us sick, biocognition is about identifying what makes us healthy, what makes us happy, and what makes us live longer, more fulfilling lives. Today, we're pleased to present portions of a talk Dr. Martinez gave at an event sponsored by our sister station, KPFK, in Los Angeles. This hour, you'll hear Dr. Martinez discuss a wide range of phenomena, including neural maps, complexity theory, the relationship between inflammation and shame, and ways of healing emotional wounds that afflict all too many of us. You can get the entire talk on CD for a $75 one-year pledge to KPFA, and we are also offering Dr. Martinez's 6-CD boxed set, The Mind-Body Code, for a $250 one-year pledge to KPFA. Let me first give out the phone numbers, which you can call anytime this hour. They are 510-848-5732, 510-848-KPFA, or toll-free 1-800-439-5732, which is 1-800-HEY-KPFA. Let's go now to portions of Dr. Mario Martinez speaking in Los Angeles to a packed house of Pacifica Radio listeners.
Neuroscience has been studying how the brain works based on pathology. You have a particular type of brain damage, and it looks at what doesn't work, and it tells you this area of the brain, if it's damaged, it won't work on this. And that's good, but it's not enough. So in the last few years, there's been research looking at how the healthy brain works, and we've been able to find out a tremendous amount of information, especially what's called plasticity of the brain, that the brain can have damage and it can repair itself with the proper work, but also that your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs can actually create neurochemistry. And that's what I'll be talking about, and hopefully be able to explain as much as I can. So the thinking is that what's good science? Good science looks at what works and studies it, comes up with theories, and comes up with ways of testing it, but most importantly, puts it down to earth to see how you can use it. And one of the things that I've done is, as Christine was saying, is work with centenarians, people who live over 100. There are 80,000 centenarians in the United States, and growing. At first, it was thought that it was genetic. Say, well, if you have good genes, then you're going to live long. What I found in the research is that it's only about 25% genes, and the rest is cultural beliefs and cultural support. So it's very interesting to see that how can a thought, how can an emotion, how can an image change your biology? Well, first, I'll just give you a really quick rundown on the model of the immune system that I present. The immune system is not just a protector. It's not just a warrior who kills germs. It's a lot more than that. It creates situations of repair. It repairs tissue, but most importantly, it really confirms the reality that you live. It confirms the reality that you live. And I'll give you a quick example, and I'll go over quite a bit, but one example. People who are assertive, especially people who are HIV positive, who are more assertive than people who are not so assertive, what the virus does is that the virus sends out some proteins and it begins to kill what's called CD4 cells. That's an immune system cell that coordinates the destruction of cells, of cancer cells, and especially HIV. So what the virus does is it begins to wrap itself around, or the proteins around, and it kills the CD4 cells. So George Solomon, he was my mentor, and he discovered psychoneuroimmunology. He called it psychoimmunology at first at UCLA. And of course they thought he was crazy because how can the immune system relate to anything psychological? Well, he was able to find that it worked. Not only that, but the nervous system, and they call it psychoneuroimmunology. So what he did is that he measured the level of CD4 cells, T cells, in a person with HIV positive. And he divided it into groups of people who were assertive. He did a psychological test to see if you're assertive. And assertive means that you're able to set limits. And people who were not assertive. And what he found was that the more assertive you were, the higher your CD4 cells. So basically the immune system is saying, if you're assertive, I'm going to be assertive. If you're not assertive, I'm not going to be assertive. And there's much more research that I'll go over gradually. But basically the good news is that it's not genetics. Genetics are predisposition. They predispose you to something. The expression is based on the belief system that you have, the environment that you live, of course, the food you put into your body. But I don't mean the positive psychology of I feel good and everything's going to be wonderful. That doesn't work. Your biology is a lot more intelligent than that. If you say, I'm wonderful, and you have low self-esteem, it's not going to help you. You have to go in deeper. Then, the most important thing is why is it so difficult to change? If it were simple, when I used to practice, I would say, smoking's going to kill you. Oh, well, thank you. All right, I won't smoke anymore. Or you're depressed, and you say, you shouldn't be depressed. Look, what a beautiful day. You're right, thank you. I'm not going to be depressed anymore. And you know that doesn't work. Why? Because we wire our beliefs with neurotransmitters. And the more that we do something, the more neurotransmitters you have, the neuromaps that you create. So if you have a negative view of the world, what's going to happen is you're going to be an expert at finding negativity in the world. At the neurological level with neurotransmitters, what was found was that the more you repeat something in your behavior and your existence, the more neuromaps you create and the more the proliferation of those neuromaps. And why? Because the brain interprets it that if I'm repeating something, it must be important for survival, even if it's negative. So why is it difficult to change? Because we make commitments to things like putting money in the bank. And you make a commitment to something and it has intellectual commitment, emotional commitment, like all kinds of commitments that you make, and all of a sudden you find out that you shouldn't do that anymore. You have created rituals about smoking, you've created rituals about overeating or having bad thoughts or whatever. And just because you know that it's not good for you, it's not going to change. It doesn't work like that. You have created chemistry and you've created neurons that connect with each other that are specially made and specially connected to give quality to what you're believing, whether it's good or bad. And what cognition does is it rationalizes what the brain has been putting into repetition. So for example, bring it down to earth. You believe that tall people are dumb. Okay? So you begin to, tall people are dumb, and you're creating neuromaps that look at selective perception. And what you do is you look for the unintelligent things that tall people will say. And cognition will say, there you go, dumb. And if you find, you find a person that overwhelms you with intelligent evidence and is tall, you'll say, well, there's an exception to every rule. So you can't win. And that's what makes it so difficult to change, even though you think that you need to change, even though that you believe that it's not good to do the things that you do. So what does the immune system do? It was biology, actually what biology did is it borrowed the model of Newtonian physics. Newtonian physics works really well with thermodynamics, carburetors, telescopes, and these kinds of things that are non-living. But it doesn't work real well with biology. So one of the laws of Newtonian physics is that things go from order to disorder. Entropy. And then you impose that belief and you say, as you grow older, your brain was ordered and it gets disordered and your brain gets sick and eventually you become feeble-minded. Complexity theory in living things, in living people, looks at it differently. Systems go from simple to complex, and the brain becomes much more complex. If you live in a culture that believes that it's possible, then your neuropsychology, your ability to create, your ability to remember better the things that you're interested in, is best from 65 to 85, and with centenarians, as long as they live, the ones that are in good shape. There's some research that shows that if you go back to college, or if you go to college at 70, you're going to do better than the kids who are going to college at 20. Because you have more complexity in your brain. And you're also interested in doing it, and you're there because you want to, not because daddy and mommy want you to be there. So the first myth to break is that growing older deteriorates the brain. That's a myth. That's not science. And I'll give you another example. When you're, let's say, 20, your brain is very lateralized. The left side of the brain, if you're right-handed, the left side of the brain, most of the language is on the left side. And if you do an MRI, you'll see that when you're speaking, these things in the left side light up. Broca's area and Wernicke and all that lights up. But as you grow older, and the right side, of course, has to do with visual spatial mapping, music, intuition, those kinds of things. The back of the brain has to do with the visual cortex, the information from the retina goes in, and then you begin to see the world. So as people grow older, then you look at their brain with an MRI, and it looks less lateralized. And immediately, since you have that model of from order to disorder, okay, you are older, and your brain is deteriorating, and you're losing neurons. It was thought before that neurons don't grow. You get a certain amount, that's it. Not true. Neurons continue to grow, especially in the hippocampus. Continues to grow. So it's very hopeful science. But how do you debunk that? Well, some people have done some research, Richard Davis especially at Wisconsin, and he's a neuroscientist, and he's done a lot of work with Tibetan lamas and people who do also Christian contemplative training. And he finds that when people go into deep levels of relaxation, they lose that lateralization, and the brain looks like it's old with the old model. So it's complex rather than deteriorated. And when these people finish their meditation, they go back and they lateralize, and it just goes back into what would be considered normal. So a lot of these things are being debunked by looking at healthy brains and healthy immune systems. Okay, so the immune system model, and this is important because that's what keeps us healthy, but much more than that. The immune system model is a model of battle, and it only looks at the stress components. If you're stressed, it's fight or flight, and you're going to secrete cortisol from your adrenal glands, and cortisol suppresses the immune system, and you get sick. That's the pathological model. That's stress. The healthy model, why is it that when you begin to study healthy emotions like compassion or empathy, why is it that the immune system begins to secrete not cortisol, but antibodies like IgAs and other antibodies, not to protect you from anything, but to make you stronger, because there's no fight. So that model, the immune system, is very limited and not complex enough to explain the positive emotions. There was never any interest in looking at the positive emotions, only looking at the negative emotions, because it's a model of pathology. You learn pathology, and biocognition is learning the illnesses, learning how you get sick, and the causes of health. Very few people study the causes of health, and there are causes of health. Genetics is about 5%, with genetic distortions that actually cause you to have an illness when you're born and so forth. 95% is moving toward health. So your brain, your body's constantly struggling to be healthy rather than letting you fall into being unhealthy. So how is the immune system cultural? It's a cultural system. Of course, there's biochemistry and there's immunology, but it's cultural in the sense that you cannot get yourself out of a culture. One example, a culture, some cultures believe, especially in Peru and other areas of South America, that when women are going through the menopause and they have hot flashes, they call that bochorno, which means to be shamed. We know now that when a person is shamed, the immune system causes inflammation. You begin to secrete interleukins-2 and other kinds of molecules that cause inflammation, as if you're fighting a wound, but you have a biosymbolic wound. So since that culture tells you that to have the hot flashes is bochorno or shame, women who are going through the menopause have higher levels of inflammation than women in Japan who consider the menopause and the hot flashes the second spring. The second spring. How can the immune system know that? Second spring, words, because symbols start early in life. So the second spring, no inflammation, shame, inflammation. So you see, it's cultural. It confirms the beliefs of the culture. But what happens is that we have portals, what I call cultural portals. And those portals will tell the biology how it should function. You have a portal of infancy, and infants are expected to do certain things. Then you have pre-adolescence, and you have adolescence, then you have middle age, then you have the adult and third age, and then you die. Those are portals. And you're in those tunnels, what I call tunnels of helplessness, and you are 44 today, and then tomorrow you turn 45. And 45 is middle age in this culture, let's just say. And you're like this, 44, and then you step into 45, I'm middle age. Then you buy all of the cultural portals, the ammunition of, I'm too old for this, I'm middle age now. Back to college, I'm middle age. And you buy the middle age consciousness, and your biology will follow.
Is Against the Grain on listener-sponsored KPFA, Pacifica Radio in Berkeley, and I'm here to interrupt Dr. Martinez for a few minutes, give you plenty of time to call 510-848-5732, 510-848-KPFA, or 1-800-439-5732, 1-800-439-5732. We have some wonderful thank you gifts for you this hour. This is a speech. You've been listening to portions of a talk that Dr. Mario Martinez, a pioneering clinical neuropsychologist who specializes in both emotional and physical health and longevity, that he gave in Los Angeles at a event sponsored by KPFK, which is our sister station in Los Angeles. And it's yours for a $75 pledge to KPFA. The complete talk and presentation, a $75 pledge. You get the talk on CD, 510-848-5732, 1-800-439-5732. And we are also offering the audio package, the 6.5-hour, 6-CD boxed set, The Mind Body Code, How the Mind Wounds and Heals the Body by Mario Martinez. That is a $250 one-year pledge to KPFA. That's $20.83 a month. Yes, you can put it on installments. You can also pledge online at kpfa.org, 510-848-KPFA, 1-800-439-5732. The thank you gift of the complete talk at this KPFK sponsored event in Los Angeles. It's your thank you gift for a $75 pledge or more to KPFA, and then the 6-CD boxed set, The Mind Body Code, yours for a $250 one-year pledge to KPFA. 510-848-5732. And if you want the 7-CD Dr. Mario Martinez Spectacular, it is 6 CDs, The Mind Body Code, How the Mind Wounds and Heals the Body. It's a handsome boxed set. And the CD of the full-length Martinez talk at this event in Los Angeles. You can get both for a $300 pledge to KPFA, and that looks like it's something like $23 per month for a lot of information about physical and emotional health. He is the founder, Mario Martinez is, of biocognitive science, a new paradigm that investigates the causes of health and the learning of illnesses. The causes of health and the learning of illnesses. More importantly, biocognition identifies complex discoveries of how our cultural beliefs and attitudes affect our immune, nervous, and endocrine systems and translates them into practical applications. Basically, what Dr. Mario Martinez is saying and has been saying for years in a very influential way is that your mindset dictates your reality, and your reality affects your biology. And so, for example, this 6-CD, 6.5-hour box set, the Mind-Body Code, is crammed full of practical applications and exercises, ways for you to deal with and to resolve and to figure out emotional issues around belief and attitude and conviction that in turn will help you achieve physical health, greater physical health, and longevity. 510-848-5732. But this talk, also available for a $75 pledge to KPFA, also gives you lots of practical advice, practical approaches. Dr. Martinez would have nothing, would not care about theory if it didn't relate to reality. It didn't relate to practical steps one can take to live longer, to have a more happy and fulfilled and healthy life. 510-848-5732, 1-800-439-5732. And this 6-CD box set, the Mind-Body Code, has 6 sessions. The first is on biocognitive science, of which Dr. Martinez is a pioneer. The second is on what he calls a psychology of abundance. The third is about secrets of centenarians, debunking myths of aging. The fourth is the language and dynamics of relationships, safety, love, patience, and more. The fifth is on how cultural beliefs and context affect the immune system. And the sixth is about forgiveness and empowerment. And the talk that we are presenting portions of today is a lot about the immune system. And if you just reflect a moment on how important our immune systems are, and without a strong and robust immune system, how we can fall prey to so many illnesses and diseases and things that put us at dis-ease. 510-848-5732, toll-free 1-800-439-5732. You can also pledge securely online at kpfa.org. This is about not just KPFA's health and well-being, because, of course, when you give, you are helping support KPFA. You are helping keep KPFA strong and healthy. This is about your health and well-being. This is about your thoughts and your body and your beliefs and your attitudes and your well-being and your sense of fulfillment. So, in a sense, this thank you gift is very deeply about helping you get to a place that you want to go. And if you are 100% happy and fulfilled, and if you are devoid of illnesses and have no physical problems whatsoever and have no history of trauma or stress or violence or abuse, then, you obviously don't need this. But if there's something about you or somebody you care about that you want to address, then Dr. Mario Martinez is, according to many people, and I've listened to a lot of his stuff, and it's sort of mind-changing and belief-changing, and you can kind of feel your attitudes shift, and you can really feel your understanding about health expand while you listen to either this talk, yours for a $75 or greater pledge to KPFA. By the way, $75, folks, that's $6.25 a month. Is KPFA worth it to you? Is your health and well-being worth it to you? Is your family's health and well-being worth it to you? Consider things like that. And then, of course, the Mind-Body Code, a 6-CD, 6.5-hour box set, yours for a $250 pledge to KPFA. 510-848-5732, 1-800-439-5732. Let's return now to more of Dr. Mario Martinez speaking in Los Angeles recently.
We've been able to find ways of correlating, not cost, but correlating cancer, for example, autoimmune illnesses that have some correlation with ways of thinking and ways of living. There's a strong correlation in people who express cancer, who are caretakers. They take care of everybody. They never take care of themselves. They have to take care of everybody before they run out. They basically are exhausted. NK cells, natural killer cells, are the ones who kill a lot of the precancer cells. And sometimes you might have precancer cells and they're killed. But when you're exhausted, when you don't have enough time for yourself, or you don't have time to assimilate the day, your NKs drop. And pathogens are very opportunistic. When they see that there's an opportunity, they come in and they grow. So not taking care of yourself, not setting good limits with people, sets you up for the possibility of expressing illnesses. Problems like rheumatoid arthritis. The way that George Solomon discovered rheumatoid arthritis was related to immune system and psychological processes, was that he was studying women with rheumatoid arthritis. And the thinking was that you have the rheumatoid factor, which is an antibody against an antibody. It's an antibody, okay? So you have that, and if you have that, you're going to have a very high possibility of having rheumatoid arthritis. But he challenged that. You have to be a revolutionist. And once the revolution's over, then be an evolutionist. Don't stay in the revolution. It's not good. So anyway, he begins to study women, siblings, twins, identical twins, and he begins to see that there's a difference in that how people express the illness. He found that some women developed, and I say women because it's a much higher incidence of women than men. Some women did not have the rheumatoid factor and developed rheumatoid arthritis. Other women had the rheumatoid factor and did not develop it. And some of them had the factor and developed it. So he began to ask himself, this is back in the 60s, what's going on here? And he started asking them questions. And many of people who have inflammatory illnesses have had some shaming, very major shaming event from a significant person in your life. And these two women, one, they were in their 40s, one was an athlete in great shape, the other one had all the crippling symptoms and deterioration of rheumatoid arthritis. It's autoimmune, meaning that the immune system doesn't recognize self, and it begins to attack cartilage and other parts of the body, and then you start all the pain and the deterioration. Both had been sexually abused by their father for years. The father was still alive, living in a nursing home. The one who had the rheumatoid arthritis, he was asking her, so what kind of relationship do you have with your father? She said, oh, well, I've forgiven him. Forgiving is not an intellectual process. It's much more than that. So she said, oh, well, I've forgiven him. And when I go see him, I tell him I love him. He asked me if I could tell him, and I tell him. And when I tell him that, I go home and all the symptoms get worse. And I go to my rheumatologist and he says, that's stress. Because you see your dad who's sick. And when somebody says that's stress, usually they don't know what to tell you. So he sees that she really has this serious problem with the father. The other one, he interviews her, and she had the rheumatoid factor, but she did not express it. She did not develop it. And she asked him, what is your relationship with your father? And she said, I have nothing to do with that HP. And that doesn't mean Hewlett-Packard. That's in Spanish, son of a HP. Hijo de puta. So it's not Hewlett-Packard. Anyway, so he begins to, and what we know now, immunologically what was going on, is that woman who had to see the predator, she was secreting all kinds of interleukins and all kinds of inflammatory molecules which were exacerbating the illness. The other one had what he called righteous anger, which is good for the immune system. You don't want to be angry. You want to have righteous anger in the right place, in the right context. So she had this, I have nothing to do with this man, and angry, appropriately angry, did not develop the illness. So then they start looking at other things that actually affect your health by your way of looking at the world. And one of the things that was found was that not only rheumatoid arthritis, but many of the illnesses that are what's called pro-inflammatory or inflammatory kinds of illnesses have a strong relationship with the consciousness of shame. And one of the things that we want to do with research, clinically we've been able to show it with many cases, is that every wound, and there are 3 wounds that I'll talk about, what I call the archetypal wounds. The good news is you can only be wounded psychoneuroimmunologically 3 ways. Abandonment, which is the most primitive. If a child's abandoned, the child dies. That's the most primitive. But you can also do emotional abandonment, intellectual abandonment, sexual abandonment, many things. And the other one is shame. Shame. And you cannot shame someone until they can identify themselves in a mirror and say, that's me. So if a child is 9 months old, you can't shame them. You can scare them, but you can't shame them. They have to look and say, who's that? Oh, that's me. Then you can shame them. So if you're going to shame, wait till they... No, I'm kidding. You should never shame anybody. There are other ways of doing it. And the third one, which is very difficult, is when you are betrayed. Betrayal. Very strong. And usually when we do the research and look at what's the phenomenology of the person and what's the physiology of the person, when a person is abandoned, and what we do is we do a deep relaxation, not hypnosis, deep relaxation, and go into the wound and identify the wound and then embody it, see where you feel it in your body. They feel cold. They feel very cold, and fear is the prominent emotion. When you feel shame, you feel hot, and you notice how people turn red. And you feel like you want the world to swallow you. You want to like this, with shame. And you have inflammation. What happens when you have abandonment, you have a hypervigilance. You start looking around for mommy, and what happens is you begin to secrete a lot of the nervous system kinds of transmitters, and you're on hyper alarm, and you're cold. You're cold is because your circulation is dropping and to the peripheral, or from the peripheral, and you're getting cold. The other one is the opposite. You get hot because you're... And the third one, betrayal, you turn hot and you get angry. And you can identify it very early in a child. If a child's 3 years old, and you tell them, do you want this little bell? Yeah. Okay, why don't you sing a song for me and I'll give it to you. And the child sings a song and you don't give them the bell, they start crying and they get angry. That's betrayal. You tricked me. You said you were going to do something, you didn't do it. You said that you could be trusted and you can't. Each of them has a physiological reaction, and each of them has a propensity to develop particular types of illnesses, not causes, correlations, propensity, correlations. And what I have found is working with rheumatoid arthritis, and especially working with fibromyalgia, I have not found one case who did not have some kind of shaming event, strong shaming event. Because, we all could be shamed, but on a regular pattern basis, there's a shaming process. So what happens is that you are shamed by someone who's important in your life. So that person you usually love, or you admire that person, and they shame you, and you wrap love around the shame. And then you speak shame with love, and you look for people that will shame you, or you shame them. And you teach your children the language of shaming. So one of the things that we do with the work is untangle the wound from love. So love can be without the wounds. You know people who will tell you, I've been married 5 times, and this is really a coincidence. Each time they abandon me. That's because they speak the language of abandonment fluently. And they either abandon or get abandoned. So it's very important to see how those wounds relate to your life, but also relate to your biology. Okay, so now going into the healing fields. What is the antidote to the wound? Each of the wounds has an antidote, and I call them archetypal wounds because I've seen them across all cultures. African continent, Asia, the United States, South America, Central America, all over. And once you have that wound, what is the healing? The healing field, or the antidote for abandonment, is commitment. Commitment is the antidote. For shame is honor. And for betrayal is loyalty. So a clinical example of how you can apply that. Had one patient who, and by the way, illnesses, in addition to having a genetic predisposition and environmental conditions, are usually, they have two conditions that you should consider. One is, what is it getting me out of doing that I don't want to do? And this is not to blame yourself, this is just the process. Or, what is it that I don't want to do because I don't feel worthy of it? This is why you see people who save money all their lives, and they go to Florida to watch a sunset, and 6 weeks later, cancer or a heart attack. And Robert Sapolsky is a biologist at Stanford, and he wrote a book called Why Zebras Don't Have Ulcers. And the reason is that when a zebra has a predator, the zebra will go into fight or flight. Once it's over, goes back to eating. What do? The IRS, you keep thinking about the IRS, and on and on and on, or whatever it is. And so you, on hyper alarm, and ulcers are a way they used to think, well, ulcers are caused by stress, ulcers are caused by some bacteria. It's caused by both. Population of bacteria live in your intestines and in your gastrointestinal system. Fine. When they grow more than they need to, that's when they cause damage. So H. pylori is one of the causes, but only when you're into a stressful chronic situation that you decrease the possibility for the immune system to kill the bacteria. Then the bacteria grows and it develops into ulcers and other things. So it's a co-authoring. It's a co-authoring rather than one thing causing another. We also make a really big mistake in thinking by looking at, imagine that a person is a circle, and it's a bioinformational field. You're exchanging information, and you happen to be biological, and your bioinformation. And then you have lung cancer. And conventional biology will say, what caused the lung cancer? Cancer cells. It's not true. That's just the effect. What caused the cancer in your lungs is a co-authoring of the cancer cells and a chronic immune system that is weak, that cannot fight, and cannot allow the control of the expression of the propensity for cancer. So every illness has a co-author. It's not where it is, that's only an expression, it's only a portal of the total system. You can't separate the mind from the body. You can talk about it, but you can't separate it. So all these things, what they're basically saying is that you have tremendous power to change, but you can't say, I'm going to will myself out of an illness. It doesn't work that way. It requires a lot more work. Why? Because sometimes it gets to a critical mass that there's not much you can do. Also, when you're trying to change, before you can change, you have to feel worthy of the change. People will not heal unless they feel worthy. That's the first necessary point. And second, you have to have the right help. But then you have to deal with the co-authors that are also co-authoring the illness with you without knowing it. So you see that it's the immune system is cultural. It's a biocultural system.